optional day of studying, getting prepared for our midterm, which will go live here in a few hours and be open until the end of the weekend. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. The first one is, wow, I'm really impressed that people showed up to this. I thought for sure no one's going to come. And here there are, 10 of you in total. So kudos to you. You have proved me wrong. I was like, no one's going to wake up early on their day where they start late to come to a study group with me, but here you are. Second thing is this is not going to be me reading the questions to you and having you answer them because that's not a study group. That's me giving you the answers. That's not very helpful. So it's not going to be that. So if you're expected to come in here today and get all the answers, sorry, but that's just not going to happen. And then the third thing is this is not going to take a whole entire hour. Probably will take 30 minutes, give or take. If you guys want to stay for questions, you're welcome to, but don't feel like you're going to be here for the whole hour. I don't foresee it taking that long. So let's do this. Since Sophia and I are the only ones on camera, why don't we just go off camera, Sophia, and be like everybody else because it's still early. Okay. There's a few different ways we can do this. The first way we can do it is I can just go around the room and pose the question to different people and then have you kind of answer out what you think the answer is. Or I can just post the question and you can either put it in the chat box or raise your hand. So why don't we do this to get ourselves warmed up? Give me a green check if you think I'd rather you call on different people to answer the question, or a red X as in just post the question and we should all answer it via chat box. Okay, the people have spoken. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a question out there, and then you put in the chat box what you think it is, and I'll call on somebody who submitted their answer in the chat box to kind of elaborate on it. But for those of you just joining us, once again, this is not going to be the direct questions on the midterm because that would not be a study group. That would just be me giving you the answers. So, first question. This is a true or false question, a little bit reworded differently than the test will be. Projects are different than regular work because they have a clear start date and end date. True or false? All right, Karina, you put true. Why is that true?
Projects are planned with a start date and end date. That's why it's project management.
That's right. What makes a project different than the regular tasks that you do every single day in the workforce is that it has a clear start date and a clear end date. All right. So let's talk about the different people who are impacted by a project. Okay. So if a project manager says the word stakeholder, what does that term mean in project management? Put it down in the chat box. What is a stakeholder in project management? All right, Brian, you put someone with a common interest in the success of the project. Do you mind elaborating for us what that means? That's the correct answer.
Yeah, I was going to say people who put money in, but it also kind of includes people who, the workers, anyone who benefits from the success of the project and or company is considered a stakeholder.
So let me ask you a question, Brian. If they're building a new train line through your neighborhood and you live on the block where they're building the train line, but you don't take the train because you have a car, are you a stakeholder in the success of that project? Yes or no?
Not really.
You don't think so?
I mean, it doesn't really affect me.
Well, what about when they're drilling at 8 o'clock on a Friday morning and you're trying to sleep? That doesn't affect you?
I think that's a case-by-case thing. I'm up early than 8.
You're up early anyways. Sure.
But I mean, I'm sure other people would be, yeah.
Yes. Well, I use that as an example because the stakeholder, what you said was perfect, Brian. Basically, anybody who has a vested interest in the project. So some of you put down someone who's in charge of the budget. That's partially right. The person in charge of the budget is a stakeholder but that person or entity, sometimes a corporation pays for a project. What is that person called? The person who funds the project or the entity who funds the project. Yeah, thank you, Hannah. The answer is sponsor. The sponsor is the person who funds the project. The stakeholder, to Brian's comment, is anybody who has an interest in the success of a project. So to go back to the train example, who's the project sponsor? The city of New York is the project sponsor. Our tax dollars pay for the new train line. The MTA would be the project manager. They're the ones who are building it. And who's the stakeholder? The people who are going to ride that train, and one could argue people who live on the block where the train's being built. But everybody who rides that train has a vested interest in the success of that train line. So the three different people are the project sponsor, they paid for the project, the MTA, they're the project managers, the stakeholders, anybody who has a vested interest, but all of them are considered stakeholders. There's a horn beeping in the background. I apologize for that. I have a vested interest in horns not beeping in the middle of the morning when I'm trying to work. All right. Everyone clear on that? Any questions on that one? So they're all stakeholders, but the project sponsor pays for it. Project manager does the project. Project stakeholder, people who have a vested interest in the success. All right. Here's the next question. This is go back to unit 1. So let's see how good our memories are. Every project starts with a blank. All right, Manny, you put problem. Why is that the case? Which is the correct answer, by the way.
I put problem because I remember we were doing a little deliverable of how to create on how to plan like a project. So we started a problem to eject it and everything. So in order for us to solve the problem, we had to like wait. Let me record it. My bad. So in order for us to solve the problem, we had to start a project, and that's why I chose problem.
Yes, that's right. So some people put plan. The planning is actually the next phase. And we're going to talk about the 5 phases of project management. That's one of the questions coming down the pike. But a project always starts with a problem to be solved. All right. This is a more of a long form question. What is a project charter? So somebody talks about a project charter in project management. What exactly is that? Oh man, got some of you guys stumped.
Can I hear that question one more time?
Yep. What is a project charter? Yes, David Torres, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So, a project charter is a document of a project that shows the objectives, details of the project.
Yes, it shows the vision, it shows the budget. It's very high level, but it's a document that you show to the project sponsor. This is our plan of action to move forward on this project. And Andre, you put a good descriptor there. It shows who's responsible for what and when it needs to be completed. So Andre, why is a project charter such a pivotal part in the planning process of a project? What do you think, Andre?
So it's basically an outline that shows all the details that the team needs to know, and the task that needs to be delegated to each teammate when the project is due, and all the descriptions that's involved in each task.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so important because if you don't have that written out, and that be your reference in your guiding document. It's very easy to have. I'm going to lead into the next question. Scope creep. So, what is scope creep? If someone says that in project management, what are they referring to? Good answer so far. Hannah, I think you have the most thorough answer. So, Hannah, true or false, scope creep is a good thing. Unmute yourself. What do you think? True or false?
I think that it's like I don't know. So what I see it as is that it's a good thing because it prepares you for problems that might arise in your project.
Anybody disagree? Randy, you say it's false. Why is it false, Randy?
It kind of shows the faults in the plan and the schedule that you guys had. So like if I'm 3 days off, that's kind of like scope creep, and because I had a plan and that not being accounted for, it kind of hurts. It's a scope creep. I just say false. I'm sorry. I could be wrong.
No, scope creep normally is something that you want to avoid as a project manager. So if you recall the first time that we met as a class, the first unit, I talked about imagine that you're on a project to build a bridge. And then halfway through building the bridge, the project sponsor says, it'd be really nice to build a little park under the edge of the bridge, with a swing set and like a soccer field and nice views of the bridge. And you're like, well, that wasn't in our scope of work. So we're not going to do that because you hired us to build a bridge, not to build a park. That's an example of scope creep, when these outside forces or ideas come in that try to derail the success of the project. Like you need to keep your project on task, on budget, on time. And when different ideas come in, that can be a distraction. That would be an example of scope creep. Manny, you have a question or a comment?
Yes. So technically speaking, you're saying that everything that is out of the contract, it would be considered a scope creep, right?
It would be considered extra work that you didn't agree to in the beginning. And if the project sponsor wants to fund it and is happy to extend your deadline, then sure, of course you can do that. What scope creep really is when they try to sneak things in there that are going to derail you from your plans. That's when it's bad. But yeah, if you said it's about the park example, sure, we can build a park, but are you going to give us an extra month of work, an extra 50 grand? Well, no, I'm not doing that. Well, then we're not doing it because that's scope creep. But they say, yeah, sure, we'll fund you and give you some extra money and time. Then of course, then you can do it. But it's just as a project manager holding your ground, saying time out here. We didn't agree with these terms and conditions, so let's have a conversation. And yes, Sophia, it can happen at any time or any phase. So I hope that's clarifying. So yes, it's when those outside forces come in that derail you, that get you off track, that set your whole team back. Normally it comes from the project sponsor because they get a vision bigger than their budget, and then you have to be like, hey, I'm sorry, but we're not going to do that unless you fund us more and give us more of a longer deadline. So this is why project managers get paid so much money, because you have to keep both the project sponsor happy with realistic expectations and also make sure your team is able to complete the task that they're required to do. So can I get a thumbs up if we're all clear on scope creep and what it is? Okay, because scope creep is more like the negative effects of additional work. If people are saying, I want additional work, I'm going to pay you, sure. But let me just sneak little things in there. That's scope creep. All right, excellent. Let's keep moving along. What is a kickoff meeting in project management in the chat box? And does that have something to do with football? Yes, Samaje, you got it mostly right. But it's the first meeting with the project team. Typically, the project sponsors are there as well. Samaje, do you mind unmuting yourself? Do you remember any of the elements that should be included in a kickoff meeting? Like what should be discussed in that conversation?
Oops, can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't have my mic on. I think we like address the agenda of the project, like who's doing what, who's what's this, what's that. It's just like what we do for Monday morning kickoff, start of the week and stuff like that. Correct me if I'm wrong or
Nope, you got the nail. You hit the nail on the head. It's when you come together, you all get on the same page. You assign the responsibilities, roles, objectives, timelines, budgets. You make sure everyone's aligned because the thing of it is that you don't want to start the project and realize, oh, that wasn't exactly what we wanted to do. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page. All right, here's an easy one to get us some inspiration. True or false? Kickoff meetings are not necessary and can be replaced by an email. True or false? So Angie, you said false. Why is that false?
Because it's not the same when you're on a virtual email, because there is if somebody has a question, it will take longer for the other person to give a response. So by if everybody's on a meeting, like everything could be clear, everything at the same time, so everybody could start right away.
Right, exactly. I think I shared this in class. Imagine if you did a kickoff meeting email and you sent that as the PM at 9 in the morning. By lunchtime, you would literally have hundreds of emails responding back to that one email, and you don't want that. You just don't. It's better to have a 30-minute, hour-long tops conversation. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. Field questions. Okay, we're set. Let's do it. As opposed to putting everything in email. And then Amadul, typically, yes, you could sign the contract at the kickoff meeting. Normally what happens is you have the project charter, which is we talked about earlier. That's the high level document. The project sponsor must sign that one. And then you kind of get more into the weeds with your team. You sign responsibilities at a deeper level. And then you have the kickoff meeting after that. But there could be a document signing there. It depends on how the project wants to be run. And of course, it can be done via Zoom due to COVID, which I'm sure a lot of them are now. But it should be a meeting. It should not be an email or a text message or, hey guys, we're going to start the project now. Go team. It should be a conversation in person. All right. How are you all feeling? Are we feeling like, oh, I got this. I got this midterm. I'm good. All right. Awesome. We got about, let's see here, 8 more questions or so to get through. Requirement gathering. What is requirement gathering in project management? Who remembers in the chat box? Well, David, you can't answer the question with using the same word as in the answer. This one got a few people stuck. All right, let's spend some time about this. Do you remember how we were talking about like yesterday how some products and projects they tried to launch but they failed? Do you guys remember that? I know we're not seeing each other. Just give me a thumbs up if you remember that. That was only yesterday. I'm sure you do. But do you remember how we talked about the Arch burger right? The cheeseburger that they made at McDonald's that nobody wanted. What happened was they didn't do requirement gathering, which is that's the way that you test out what does the end consumer actually want. All right. And that's a really important step in project management because if not, you end up creating things like the Archburger, which you spend millions of dollars developing and then it ends up being a total flop. So there's three different ways to gather requirements. I'll say the first one, if you remember the other two, put in the chat box, but the first one is one-on-one interviews. All right. So you sit down with a person, maybe you give them, sample of what you're developing. Yep, Amadou got the second one, survey. You can survey people and ask them what they're interested in. Yeah, focus groups is like the one-on-one interview. And there's a third one. Do you recall what the third one was? Yes, Sophia, you got it. Observation. So observation is an example of, I think I used it in class, where if you're on a team that says, hey, we're going to turn this 2-lane highway into a 4-lane highway, you don't need to do a survey or a focus group or an interview. Just go in your car at 5 p.m. during rush hour, look at the bumper to bumper traffic. Like you don't have to ask the person next to you, hey, do you think a 4-lane highway would be good here? It's pretty obvious. The problem is very clear. That's an example of how you gather requirements. So when you get that question on the midterm, requirement gathering is the surveys, it is interviews, and it is observation to make sure that you're actually creating a product that people want and they want to use. If not, you end up like the Archburger. Any questions on requirement gathering, since that was a tricky one for some of us? All right, we'll keep going then. When someone says their WBS, work breakdown structure, you guys did a whole entire assignment on it, so you should know this one. What is that? What's a work breakdown structure? So David says, when you break down the work into smaller chunks, the tasks that are involved, the details of how to be completed. Andre, Brian, a visual. Mahmoud. Yeah, Mahmoud has the best answer so far. Can you unmute yourself and kind of break down what a WBS is, Mahmoud, please?
Yeah, the WBS is basically the chart, like the chart we made that has all the steps in the project, all various parts. And usually you'll have them in some sort of order that you need to get them done. That way you know this needs to be done first, so we can do this, and you have some sort of organization to it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mahmoud. Also, let's follow up with the work breakdown structure. The bottom part of a work breakdown structure, which is down to its most potent deliverable, is called a work package. Okay, so how many hours should a work package take? Who remembers this? This is actually on the video. Oh man, you guys are good. Randy and Andre, 8 to 80 hours. All right. So the bottom of a work package, it should not be like a 1 hour thing. A work package should not be, hey, build this IKEA desk that takes me 45 minutes. It should be something that's going to take either one full workday or 2 full weeks to accomplish. But if it's something that's very complex, like, hey, build 1,000 desks, that's going to take longer than 80 hours. So that would not be a work package. That should be broken down even more. 8 to 80 hours, that's how long a work package should take. We talked about SWOT analysis. Yeah, an activity if longer. Thank you. Yeah, it's work package, then activity. Thanks, David. What does SWOT stand for in project management? There you go. You guys got it. Strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So follow-up question, why is doing a SWOT analysis an important part of planning out a project? What do you think? Yep. Highlight the areas of the project, make it more successful for sure. Avoid the setbacks. Yep. Potential offsets. Yeah, excellent. I love what Brian said. How many of you guys remember when John, our guest speaker, spoke? He talked about how when you make a project in the Marine Corps, then what you do after you make your plan is then you poke holes in your plan and try to find all the problems that could arise. That's an example of a SWOT analysis, right? Because let's be honest, no matter how well we plan, things are going to go wrong. So I'd rather things go wrong that I anticipate were going to go wrong than things go wrong that I literally had no idea were going to happen. So yeah, exactly. Problem framing, identifying what's going to happen. Hannah, excellent. Very good. Any questions on the SWOT analysis? All right, great. Let's keep moving on. In project management, you develop and you control the schedule. What is the difference between those two things, developing and controlling the schedule? Yep, Andre, you initially create it and then you make adjustments and you edit the schedule. Sophia, you got it right. Don't overthink this question, guys. Like just read it, right? Developing the schedule is like, this is how long I'm anticipating things are going to take. Controlling is, okay, it took a little bit longer than I thought. It happened a little bit quicker than I thought, and I'm going to adjust the schedule as we move on. So that's all it is. So you have, a vision or an idea. This is going to take 2 weeks, but then it's like, oh, we finished in 5 days. Now we have an extra week to tweak our schedule. Let's go ahead and move everything forward 5 days. That's an example of controlling. Or then you develop it and you say, oh, it's going to take 2 weeks, and then you get on day 10 and you realize, oh, we're going to need another 2 more weeks. Then you're adding more time. You're controlling the schedule. Project management, you don't just make the schedule and then forget about it. You're adjusting and tweaking it as you go. So yeah, Andre and Sophia both got it right. All right, next question. What is cost benefit analysis? What does that term mean? Yes, the process used to analyze the decisions, estimating the costs, looking over as why you would spend the money on something, how impactful each dollar spent is. So Randy, unmute yourself and explain your answer in more detail. I think that was good.
So it's like if you're farming, and you want to buy a tractor, you want to buy the tractor that from a company that breaks down a lot, even though it's the newest one on the block, or do you want something that's a little bit cheaper but it's reliable, so something like that? I don't know if that was the best example, but that's how I put it in my head.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. It's like, is what I'm spending for this project going to be worth, the benefit that I'm going to receive? And Amadul, you must know what I'm going to say before I say it. Tangible versus intangible benefits. So in the chat box, what's an example of a tangible benefit of doing a project? Yes, payment, the money returns, ROI. Yep. Andre, what does ROI stand for?
Of return of investment.
Right. So do you guys remember the example that we used in class? If you're leading a sales team and you're going to go to Florida for a sales conference and it costs $20,000, but as a result of the sales team going on this conference and learning new techniques, they increase their revenue by 5% monthly, and they get a return on investment after 1 year. It's already 3 times the return. Do you guys remember that? Give me a thumbs up or write yes in the chat box if you do. So that's a very clear ROI. It's like we're going to spend this money up front, but it's going to give our team techniques to earn that money back. That's an example of a tangible benefit. It's very easy to sell. Yeah, exactly. Clear return of money. Very easy to convince a project sponsor this is the right plan of action. So it's a tangible benefit. But some benefits are intangible, right? So, like for example, opening up a gym in the office would be an intangible benefit because it's not a very clear ROI. It's more like people would be happier, people would be healthier, people would be more productive, people would be, all those things. It's not quite as clear. It's an intangible benefit, and that can be a challenge of trying to sell to a project sponsor. So the tangible is we do this and then we get money back versus an intangible. We do this, but it'll make people happier or healthier. So that's the difference between tangible and intangible. Any questions on that? All right, I have one last question. Then we'll field Q&A, and then we'll call it a study session. So you finish up your project. Everything's done, but you haven't done your closing yet. The closure, which is the last phase in project management and the life cycle. We literally just talked about this yesterday, so there's no excuse on why anybody shouldn't know what this is. But why is having a closing so important in project management? Why not just say, okay, we're done, everyone go home? Why is having the closure so critical? Yes, I loved your answer, Sophia. It's good for reflection. Do you mind unmuting yourself? Like, what kind of things should you reflect on in that closing meeting?
Some things would be just what people did well and some growth areas for the future, individually and as a group. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what did we learn? What were growth areas? What can we apply for future projects? Amadul celebrating documentation. I'm not sure if anybody said it, but making sure everybody gets paid. Yeah, Karina mentioned that. The other thing is making sure that there's a person who's tasked with, if there is outstanding loose ends, that person ties those up. So all that is good. So I just gave you, I don't know, 12 or 14, big concepts that are going to be on the midterm. If you felt like out of those 14, I knew 10 of them, then you obviously are going to do really well on this exam. If out of those 14, you're like, I only was familiar with half of those, then you probably need to study a little bit harder. So I'm going to officially end our study session. We do have 25 minutes. If you want to leave, feel free to leave. If you want to stay back and ask questions, I'm free until 10. But thank you guys for being here. Like I said earlier, you all proved me wrong. I'm like, nobody's going to show up to this, but here you are, 14 people. So good on you. Kudos, and enjoy the rest of your day, and be well. If you want to stay back, I'm available.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. Mohammed, did you have a question?
Do we have you today?
There's no class today, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Randy or Samaja? Randy, you have a question?
No, I was just trying to see if anybody else had a question that maybe I could, learn from. But I guess not. I guess not.
I guess we covered it pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Eric.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.